it's going. Thank you. Happy birthday,
Thank
by
you
the way.
very much.
Sanders' birthday.
All right.
21 again, huh?
Beer's on you, right?
Yeah. Okay, we got everybody. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we do. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the annual meeting. Happy February. Glad the weather cooperated somewhat. We didn't have ice, at least, although we sure did have rain. Yeah. Did everyone get a ticket for the boat pass drawing at the end of the meeting? Okay. Very good. First on the agenda is to approve the board meeting minutes from January the 25th, 2018. Has everyone had a chance to review?
I move for approval.
Thank you.
I have one correction.
Okay.
Les Wodzinski's name was misspelled in one place, and it was Les that was misspelled.
Pretty tricky, you know.
All right.
All right, we'll
No,
move
that's bad.
But beyond
As
that.
amended.
As amended.
Let's do it.
All right, I have a motion and I have a second from you, Laura. All those in favor of that approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving right along, we have the treasurer's report. Michael, are you ready to rumble here?
I think so.
Lots of papers.
I do have lots of papers. That's yours. Okay, yes. In January, a whopping income of $706.05, and expenses were $26,766. Talked to Adam on the checks that were dispersed, and he's going to start putting a description on the bottoms of those checks for the board either before when he gets them back from Watkins Accounting. So 706 in income, 26,000 in expenses. So I would accept a motion for the approval of the report of claims for January.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I've handed out the comparison from 2016 to 2017. Again, Adam, thank you for getting that for us. Just a couple of significant notices there is the little reduction in watercraft permits, but an increase in park admission fees. And then other income is down 99.1%. And property taxes were a little lower in 2017 than 2016. Again, a lot of factors affect that. Maybe someone got a new appraisal, or it just depends on what the factors are there. And we can certainly call the DLGF and we can get a report from them online, as anyone in this room can do that. So those are the comparisons from our income side. The expense side, obviously, no operations supervisor for half the year, 52.8% in savings. And on the second page, they did expense out the barge, which gave us a negative $21,000 in income compared to a $54,000 in income in 16. And if you would just go up 3 spaces, they did not expense out the barge, $54,200 on the barge. That went to capital expenditures. This was something that was changed in the accounting. Adam and I talked about that, and that is what we're going to stick with. He and I are going to make an appointment with Watkins Accounting and go over some of these things, as well as take the 88 pages that Michael was so kind to send us today, and maybe see if they can give us some graphs on that QuickBooks report, okay? There being no questions on the 2017 annual budget summary, that is the end of my report.
Just real quick, workboat pontoon, that was 4,000.
It was.
And so what, did you buy one?
We did.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah, we have one
okay.
sitting over at All About Boats right now, and we'll have one that fires up every time, so she'll be able to get out there when people
Well, that
need us
one was
now.
pretty much a beater, so.
It is bad.
Yeah, good.
I'm surprised it's not at the bottom of the lake, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But it isn't. All right. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that brings us to Nate Long and his new friend Leif. our aquatic control vegetation review.
Thank you. I brought Willie along with me today. He's going to be taking over from me within the next year or so. So this is a year of training. So next year he'll be the one giving this report, hopefully. Passing around kind of an outline of what took place this year and kind of plans for going forward. Long history, as you know, I've been over a lot of times with everyone. You have a very nutrient-rich lake that's shallow, grows a lot of vegetation. You have invasive species, predominantly Eurasian water milfoil. Put together a graph to kind of compare the amount of milfoil we've treated over the past 20 years. And as you can see by the graph, this year we were up a little above average after 3 years of not treating near as much. Kind of the reasoning, and I think I might have mentioned at the past meeting, the last time I was here, that we thought we'd have more milfoil going forward or going into 2017 because there was quite a bit out there that fall, and it does overwinter. Even though you might get ice and everything else, it is a cool water plant that can handle those winters. Kind of the difference, I think Adam's taken a little different approach from previous managers where we're doing more management. Now we are leaving some areas where years prior we would hit a lot and then you'd have a year of very little and then come back the following year to be more, and it just was up and down. Now we're more stable, which I think is probably good budget wise. But this past year we did see an increase, even though interestingly, probably throughout the Midwest, or at least Indiana, we didn't see, it wasn't a good year for vegetation. So it was kind of surprising to see this much this early in the year. We did try to get some layer funding, which we try every year. We try to get a whole bunch. We end up getting a little every year. So we'll keep trying to get a whole bunch. We'll probably keep getting a little, which does help out some. I mean, every little bit helps, and it's just some paperwork that Adam and I do and send in, and we put together a little report for them, and you get $5,000 to help with your treatment, which helps out in the long run. But basically, we went into the year, like I said, expecting quite a bit. We found quite a bit. We treated that with our systemic product called Renovate, and it does real good for long-term control. And it did an excellent job this year because we didn't have to come back and treat hardly any more the rest of the year. So basically, we did one big treatment. As you know, we do come back and hit the Lotus, and we've done some movements of the maintenance line, so there was quite a bit to hit, and we knocked that back. We'll give you that with 2 treatments. We did have to hit some native vegetation in the upper end where it gets real shallow. You get some native coontail that can cause problems, and some curly leaf pondweed, which isn't necessarily native, but those 2 do cause some problems. We hit those in late June, get things cleaned up before the 4th. But other than that, it was what I'd say probably a more typical year, more of an average year as far as vegetation, where your 3 previous years have been lower than normal. All the treatments are outlined here on your map, so you can see where we treated this year. As you can tell, we're kind of hopping around. We don't treat every area of the lake. There are some areas we leave for taking up some nutrients for fishermen to use, and we're basically focusing on places where people have docks and are trying to get in and out and having problems. Going forward, trying to predict what happens is very difficult, and I guess I have done good the last couple of years, but I normally don't do that well. So what's in store? I'd say probably something real similar to what you saw this last year around the average, but that's just an absolute guess. It's a lot of weather dependent. If it stays warm like this and you don't get as much rain and you don't have as much turbidity, you'll see a lot of growth come on early. This lake can have topped out milfoil by April. I've seen it a few years, and we have a real mess if you don't do something early. And then some years you'll get a lot of rain, or you'll have cold weather, and if that lake stays turbid, the milfoil doesn't get going until later in June. So it's hard to assess that. The budget you've established seems to be working pretty well, and I know Adam and I would work hard to stay within that budget, and I'm sure he'll be on top of it. And unlike probably any lake I work on, this lake, if we have one spot that we don't get good control, you guys find it, and we have to come back and hit it. So hopefully, it didn't happen much last year, and hopefully it doesn't going forward, but if it does, we'll come back and take care of it. It's time for any questions.
Nate, is on the back page Didn't we do the maintenance line compromise in 2017, not 2016? Or am I a year off?
I think this 17 would have been our second year of doing the compromise.
It was, yeah.
So yeah, we did it in 16. That's
16
why,
was when we tried to move it back out, and then we had to move it back out to the compromise zone, so 17 was compromise. 16 is when we
When it
came up
was-
with the 3 different designs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. I was just making sure I had the
yeah,
years, number of
which
years
led
straight.
to having more Lotus 2 treat because we,
Right.
what was it, 3 or 4 years, we let it come all the way out and then we pushed it back and if you do that, it takes a little while to get back in check. And you're always gonna have some stuff pushing outside that line, no matter where we put it.
But it's
And-
our intent to stay with that compromise that was decided on by
I
the board
believe
then?
so, if
as-
that's what everybody
as-
here agreed
Okay,
to.
that's just what I'm making sure of, okay.
And you might have noticed some areas, there are little patches popping up in other areas around the lake. You'd like to, I mean, personally, I'd like to see you leave as much as you can. But when it does start popping up around docks and stuff and gets thick, that's when they'll call us in to treat it. But if there's not a dock there, that's a real nice plant to have, so we like to try to leave some of that. Plants do have a lot of benefits for your lake, as I think we'll probably touch on here in a little bit too, with some of your design stuff. They help clear your water up, help reduce some of the erosion along the shoreline, but we obviously recognize that they also cause issues when it comes to swimming and getting out on the lake. And I'm glad they do, because that's how we stay in business.
So that's all the plants of the milfoil and the lotus? and all
That is the large majority of it. You do have some years where you have another somewhat invasive plant called brittle naiad that comes on later in the season. And you do have some pondweed, native pondweeds that can cause issues. The upper end, you have coontail that grows in those real shallow areas, like where the lotus probably would be. Sometimes we knock that back and you'll just have coontail there. But the milfoil is your number one by far.
But you're considering all of them beneficial, or can be?
I would, that's a very good question, because I don't usually consider an invasive plant beneficial. Many of your fishermen that spend a lot of money to come to your lake probably consider it somewhat beneficial.
Yeah.
Many people that probably live here might think it's beneficial to go fishing around it. But to me, an invasive is an invasive.
Yeah.
Ideally, you would treat it all, but that's not within your budget means.
Okay, but all the other stuff you consider to be beneficial?
As long as it's not interfering with.
Yeah, yeah. I had noticed that, I think you guys do a really good job, but a lot of times it's like there's a boat or something, you can't spray behind it, or you don't, and then you get all this stuff growing up around the dock where you're not able to get in. Is there anything landowners can do about that? To get into those little pockets where you guys,
Yeah.
maybe you don't even see it from the boat, you know?
Yeah,
because
some
there's
of-
a pontoon or something in the way,
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of stuff on the other side of it that you can't see.
Oftentimes, a liquid you'll get enough concentration in there if you spray close. But oftentimes with an airboat and some of your docks, are squared off, and there's some areas that I
Yeah.
really hate even attempting to drive an airboat in, because you get stuff overhanging too.
Yeah.
So we have to be real careful, and we don't spray, we don't want to spray your boats and docks either. It's not gonna really hurt anything, but it's not very professional to be doing that. And, so we get as close as we can. I don't think I don't want to get in the habit of people going in and treating behind docks and stuff on their own. But I would say if you do have an issue like that, and if there is an area, let him know, and, we can stop and get out. If there's a spot we couldn't see or couldn't get to, we can stop and treat that area with whatever we've got.
And we do have some granular reserves at the office. There's been a couple times people have called me up and just right around docks, and I'll go out there and sprinkle some
Oh, okay.
myself. so.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Normally, you need a license, right? You can't just do it.
Well, as
You
shoreline.
can- There's a limit
do a
that you can
permit.
do
I think
privately.
it's
Yeah.
called 6 something.
625
Square foot,
I think
yeah.
it's
Right,
called-
yeah,
it's
so
called
you
6
could do that.
something.
We actually did it.
You can
Stuff's
treat a
expensive.
certain area without a license.
Crazy expensive.
As long as it doesn't exceed.
So when are you planning on treating it this year then?
That is, you guys keep an eye on it, and the way it works is, when they start seeing the vegetation come on, they'll call us up and we go out and survey it. And someone from the lake goes out with us and, helps us, because it's not always our call, it's, treat this, don't that, because, we're making money the more we treat. So
Right.
we've got people out here telling us, I think that's a problem, okay, I agree, we'll mark it down. And we go around and do that. We mark it all down, we put it into the GIS, and we'll send it back to you guys to give you an acreage, and then they approve that acreage or say, we got the spot. And I think you send that out to the,
Yeah, it was not the map. We usually start looking late March, early April. Generally, by the time we're ready to treat, it's April, late April into early May is the first treatment. So we'll start looking generally in March.
So weather's a big factor.
yeah, it is, especially your spring weather, how quickly.
And what about callbacks? Say when something comes back, you spray, something comes back,
Yeah, we.
charge for callbacks?
Yeah, we will guarantee that
Certain
we control
amount.
what's there. We can't keep stuff from growing back.
Right.
There's no, with aquatic herbicides, they're made not to last very long in the water. It's not like, there's some terrestrial herbicides, you can think like preen or something like that you might use in your flower bed, you just lay it down, nothing's gonna grow. The aquatic herbicide will kill the plants there, kill the roots, but other critters could come in there and start growing. So a callback like that, we would charge to do that, but it's pretty rare. What we've run into mostly is we'll treat milfoil, and maybe a couple months later, you start seeing native plants come in, and they might get thick enough where it's a problem, which is basically the whole design for renovative trichophylla is more for some of your public water bodies where you can go in and take out invasive plants and leave the natives. So it's kind of double-edged sword. It's good that it does that. You leave the natives, but sometimes you leave enough that they cause problems.
In the lotus areas, it does that a lot too.
Yeah, the lotus, for sure.
As soon as we spray lotus, it just comes in with invasives.
And that's one reason,
Was there a case of rain came in and washed it away possibly? Like if you had you sprayed and then heavy rain comes in,
that could happen, and if we sprayed something that we were supposed to kill and it didn't kill it, and they called us back, we treat that for no charge.
Okay.
Yeah. But if it's treated, it's gone, and a few months later something goes back, then we'll charge.
Gotcha.
Well, with that, Nate, in 2016, we had residents that said that they saw the airboat out in the rain. So is there amount of precipitation that you will spray in the rain, or?
The submerged treatments, is we're putting, like the milfoil treatment, you're putting a liquid in a liquid anyway, you're putting it in a lake.
Okay.
The rain doesn't affect that much. Now, what it does affect, where I didn't even mention, because I'm not very proud of it, was this year, our lotus treatment, I think we had some rain come in right during or after, but we always come back on that automatically. We do 2 treatments, and I didn't do the first treatment, I came back and you could tell that it had rained, but there was a lot more left than it normally was after our first treatment of the lotus. So we always do 2 treatments of that emergent plant, because normally when you're treating it, it's a little different. You're spraying it on the leaf like you would spray Roundup on your driveway. And when you're driving an airboat, there's sometimes you blow plants into the water, or you drive over plants and they don't pop up in the sun, so there's always stuff left over. That's why we do 2. But this time we definitely need 2.
And we hold them to their 90% cover.
Oh, yes, they do.
We're not hesitant to call them back.
You're doing the treatments and now we got this guy, right?
What's that?
You're doing the treatments, now we got this guy, right?
Yeah, I do some treatments, some of the
Just wanna make sure I
treatments.
forgot what's going on.
Yeah, but there's several other guys that do them as well. It's not just me.
Yeah, there's more than one, but.
Yes, ma'am.
I wondered, I saw your truck, we parked next to you, and algae is something we also address. I know you're talking about plants here. I wondered if the overflow lake was considered for treatment because of the seriousness of the algae.
I don't know if we could launch a boat in there. We never really had the algae problem there until I redid that culvert, and now there's no mixing of the water. It's just, that's a prime area for blue-green algae. You have no wake and wave action from boats. There's no plants in there. I mean, ultimately, the best thing that we could do is plant plants in there to try to take up some of the nutrients without having the flow of water, without having wave action, without it intermixing with the lake. That is just a prime example. I mean, that could be a textbook example of where you get blue-green algae blooms.
Well, I also saw in this truck aeration, like what is it called? Fountain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that could be a consideration.
It looked great out there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be
And if it
consideration.
was solar powered,
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's a big area, and it's not always a matter of oxygen. It'd be depending on how much water movement we could get with a fountain, which is a very large area. I mean, ultimately, the best thing to do would be do it natural and do it right. Do a buffer, vegetated buffer around the entire thing. That would be beneficial for water quality and to knock down the algae.
It'd be a big, shallow area to try to aerate.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be real
Because
practical.
it's only probably, 6 feet deep over there? So it's hard to get a big convection going.
Any other questions for Nate? Anybody? Thank you, as always. I think we have a contract to sign. We need a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to seek a motion for the vegetation extension agreement with Aquatic Control.
I move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the aquatic control agreement. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait to sign this.
Nate, thank you.
Where's Nate going?
I don't think anyone's busy. He's having a new. That's it.
I'll stick around for a little bit.
Okay.
Can you tell us, what, are you moving up the ladder? Are you retiring? Are you?
No,
I
Mikey.
joked that I was. Yeah, we've expanded quite a bit the last 10 years, and we have offices all around the Midwest, so I'm gonna kind of help them get going on some of the.
You're on Chaitland, right?
Do what?
You're on Chaitland?
Do what?
You're on Chaitland?
No, nope. So, I'm gonna do more of that. So,
All right.
Thank
Lake's
you.
more than qualified to do what I'm doing.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be keeping an eye on it too.
Okay, those of you who've been to meetings in the last year know that we've changed things a little bit and have been keeping public comment till the end of meetings. And it's helped, I think, to sort of get us back on track. What we have been doing a little bit of late is when we have something that we feel that you all might want to ask about or weigh in on, we have allowed limited comment on those topics. And that also, I'm pleased to say, has gone very well. We've come a long way in terms of the respect and the civility. And so we have a couple of things on the table tonight that are of major importance. And Mary Jane has the first of those with the Strategic Planning Committee update. And Michael has the dredging priorities, or Adam and Michael have the dredging priorities after that. So on those two, we will allow a limited amount from our public as long as we can all behave. With that, Mary Jane?
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this a little bit backwards from what's on the agenda. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the general update before we talk about sediment management. The committee met, when did we meet?
Last Friday.
Friday. How quickly we forget. And one of the things that we agreed on for 2018 are what our primary projects are going to be for this year. And sediment management is certainly at the forefront of the projects, but we are at a point with the committee where we have a lot of things going on and we need to stay focused on what we're doing. And so we agreed that it's not that we won't entertain any other projects than these, but that there are 4 major areas we're going to focus in during 2018, just so that we don't lose our focus. Sediment management is the primary piece of that, and obviously that's why this committee was formed in the first place. The second project is going to be in the area of financial management, and that's depending on what the board is willing to do as we make recommendations. How are we going to fund that? And we have a lot of good things in the works relative to charitable giving options, as well as pursuing bond issues and that kind of financing down the road. We're in the early stages of that. The third area that we think we need to focus in is in the area of communication, and that's one of the reasons I asked Pam to entertain some public comment for questions and things that people might want to bring up, because ensuring, I think I speak for the whole committee, ensuring that the freeholders understand what we're doing and why we're doing it and what are the benefits are going to be paramount to our success. So we're going to be looking at different areas of how do we get information out to people. We're also beginning to have discussion about having another large public meeting sometime this year as we get a little farther down the road to bring people up to date with where we are. And then we're we're going to do some other communication activities that will include enhancing the website and doing different kinds of regular communication, newsletters and emails to freeholders. And then the fourth area, unless you're going to be really surprised when I say, the fourth area where we're going to focus this year is on the development of an accessibility plan for Riddle Point Park. And that doesn't mean that all of those things are going to get 100% done, but we're going to get as far down the path in each of those areas as we can this year. So now I will go back to sediment management because that's the primary topic for this evening, and I'm going to ask Frank Van Overmeren to come up as we begin this discussion, and I'm going to kind of turn this over to you, Adam, to talk about our recommendation to the board.
All right.
And bring them up to speed.
Well, as Adam reported last month at the meeting, we basically, the Lake Health Task Group went through, prepared a request for proposal. We sent out that information. Unfortunately, the proposal amounts came back too high beyond what we were budgeted, so we had to kind of re-scope that work and re-clarify what we were looking for so that they understood that the focus of this year's 2018 work is for the purpose of getting permitting concept approval from our regulatory groups, which is the state DNR and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers through the Louisville office, and to focus on then with those conceptual approvals, be able to create some documentation that we can work through to the bonding organization. So essentially we can get something funded. That then rolls us into 2019. So we re-scoped kind of that understanding. Adam sent out some additional documentation to our 3 pre-vetted engineering consulting companies that we were talking with, and we got new proposal information back. Now with that, we pre-vetted 3 different companies, so these are all companies that could certainly do what we needed them to do. Any one of them could accomplish the task, but they each have differences in their locations, their firm capabilities, the expertise of their firms, and the location of their key personnel. So we ended up, in our process, even before we even started all of this, we talked about how we would evaluate these firms. We created an evaluation form and a system, and we counterweighted a number of these different things that I just mentioned. So as an example, pricing we looked at as a factor of 50%. Not always is the lowest price the best value for what you're going to buy. We went through and put a 15% factor for the experience of the company and the overall capabilities that they had, and then we looked at the key personnel of what they had, and we gave each one of those to a 15% weighting factor. And then we picked up location of the key personnel that are going to work on this particular project, and we ended up with a 20% factor for that. So Malcolm, myself, and Adam, we reviewed all the original proposals, well actually first the vetted information, the original proposals, and then the revised proposals that came through, and ultimately we have a recommendation to go through and select Shrewsbury as our engineering consulting firm for. Now, within the numbers, do you want me to get into that, or do you want me to just address our recommendation?
Unless people have questions, I think let's just address why we made the recommendation and then see what kinds of questions there might be.
Of the 3 different firms, Geostech is the lowest in price. However, their bid is technically not responsive because they excluded all of the meeting work that we would be required to have one way or another anyway, with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the local state DNR people, and ultimately the meeting that we're talking about having sometime in the summer for the freehold. So that would essentially double their price. KC,
What was their price?
$17,000.
That is essentially just our GIS work, so it's just the conceptual mapping, not actually getting into implementation, impacts on wetlands, really the kind of whole backlog of information that we need to start working with the Corps of Engineers. That 17K was just going to be visual representations for concepts.
Right. So it really was, when you look at that, it was a non-responsive proposal because it didn't end up giving us the meetings we needed, nor the final product or the base product that we need to ultimately be able to work with and submit to the bonding companies. So it didn't really work. They cut it way too bad, unfortunately. Our next bidder, KCI, While they have the experience to do this kind of project work, and their price was number 2, and that
It
price
was 31,000.
31,000. I just don't have the form with me, so. Their price was $31,000. However, they realistically have experience of 1. They're a multidisciplinary engineering firm. They do lots and lots of different things. They've done this exact kind of project once in the state of Ohio. So we scored them well, but ultimately Shrewsbury ended up scoring best. They had the highest price of
41.
41 change.
41.
KCI they're a civil engineering company, but the only project that worked on like this was the Grand St. Mary Lake in northern Ohio, which has a whole different animal. The problems with that was incredibly hyper-eutrophic from nutrients coming off of farmland. So that's really what they were facing. It wasn't necessarily the sedimentation loading, but dealing with the nutrients. They were focusing on treatment-trained wetlands to take up nutrients.
Correct. So then lastly is our proposal that we have from Shrewsbury, and our group, Malcolm, myself, and Adam, when reviewing that, we look at Shrewsbury brings the depth that they've done this exact kind of project several times. They have multiple offices, including a branch office in Bloomington, a main larger office in Louisville, Kentucky, which makes it very easy to meet with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which are based out of Louisville, Kentucky. Their price is $41,000 and some change. They gave us a very detailed revised proposal, which is exactly in line with all the things that we were looking for, perfectly outlining the scope of exactly the way we envision the 2018 services to be. And most importantly, they have staff here localized in Bloomington. When we look to this project, this is like an iceberg. This is only the piece of it that we can see. There's a huge piece of additional engineering work to carry us into 2019, and reality construction period services of technical assistance and on-site monitoring of what the contractor's doing and dealing with conditions as things go on. So there'll be a number of different site visits and on-site work, which having a very local company saves us dollars down the road. So even though we're technically spending more dollars now, it's better in saving us more dollars later. So with all of those factors into play and looking at what the overall project and the scope to be, our recommendation to the Strategic Planning Committee and on to the board is that we select Shrewsbury and Associates LLC as our engineering consulting company to carry us forward for what we have. And just to point out that $41,400 and some $30 number is within the $50,000 that we have budgeted for the 2018 cycle for our engineering services for our sediment management plan.
We also applied for a $50,000 design build study with Lake and River Enhancement through DNR. So hopefully we get this through our first step, the 10% process, which is what we need to start working with the Corps of Engineers. And if keep our fingers crossed, we can get some funding from DNR this year, which would actually help us step up to kind of the next level that we need.
Adam, do you have a sense of, it sounds like this is just a phase 1. Is this like 10%, 20% of the cost that we think we're gonna have with this engineering firm? Because we're talking about, I mean, and then once we're in with them, we're in with them. We're not talking about 40,000, we're talking about a lot more.
I mean, when we were looking at the 35% completion, they were all coming right around $100,000. So when we actually get into the construction engineering, if we're looking at, say, a $2 to $3 million project, we're going to be looking at probably 10% construction cost, $200,000 to $300,000, I would imagine.
This is
what they've all said.
Debbie, this is a long-term effort.
Right.
And so we are back at the very beginning.
Right.
And so I would ask, before we have more public questions, if there are questions from the board on anything that you've heard so far.
I have a question. I thought somebody said that Shrewsbury, if selected, would attend the group freeholder meeting that we had. And I don't see that in the Exhibit A. I do see where they will attend 1 to 2 pre-application permit meetings. Those would not be permit meetings.
Yeah,
Okay.
they would help in the presentation meeting that we would have sometime in this summer.
So that-
to present essentially what is the one primary path and goals, and then the options that we have in order to accomplish those goals.
Okay.
So there will be the biggest challenge is where we're gonna put the sediment.
We can actually, we have Sam here from Shrewsbury. would you guys be able to help out with the public presentation of this?
Yeah, I can say we can attend the public presentation, prepare some materials, some boards or something like that to bring to the public meetings. We can work with you on what deliverables we'll need for that, but yeah, we can.
Okay, and what I'm talking about is that's one meeting with Army Corps of Engineers is a second meeting with the Indiana DNR Fish and Wildlife is a third meeting with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management is a fourth meeting, and then meeting with possibly the City of Bloomington Utilities would be a fifth meeting. And what is in this proposal is just 1 to 2 meetings.
Well, we don't expect them to be with us for every single meeting.
Not for
The most important one is the Army Corps of Engineers. They kind of have the overhold on everything. Next in line would be DNR. We do not expect them to be with the City of Bloomington meeting. I'll be presenting the options and the concepts that would come with that, and as well as a public meeting too. We'll kind of have our concept down to one design. My plan was just kind of just myself presenting it, and we could bring somebody else on to present with that. The 2 to 3 are primarily going to be with the Army Corps. We'll have to get in with the Army Corps and have our directions there before we even go to
Right.
DNR, because ultimately they have the say over waters of the U.S.
That's in part why I should have done the rest of the SPC update before we started this discussion. Adam and I had a meeting back at the beginning of February with
I saw that.
City of
I saw
Bloomington.
that, yes, with
Okay.
Vic and John.
And
Yes.
they were most encouraging
Yes,
of our
okay.
efforts.
It's just cut down to 2 meetings, 1 or 2 meetings, and I just want to make sure that that's within the scope of work that we want them to do.
Right. The biggest challenge, as Adam said, is those two big groups. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is definitely most focused on the waterway, so that we're not taking water for somebody else, nor are we creating a flood issue by damming something that backflows and floods into other areas. Whereas the state DNR, they're all about fish and wildlife, so they don't want us interfering with the fish and wildlife system of the ecosystem. So that's really our two big keys to, regardless of whatever we do to collect this sediment and manage that sediment, that we're not affecting those two things.
That's the only question.
We may be able to combine some of those agencies into one meeting too. I think
Okay.
a lot of times we can get IDEM, DNR, and Army Corps together, that way they can all give us their concerns for the alternatives all at once, so we can capture that in one meeting.
Very good.
And Mike, that's consistent with the experiences I've had. Certainly not as large-scale project as what we're looking at here, but it is, he's absolutely right. It's not uncommon to meet with them concurrently.
Great.
Other board questions, comments? Other public questions on this piece?
Thank you.
Okay,
Good job,
thank
Frank.
you.
Was this in
I would-
reference to the Exhibit A or just his contract?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Is all this in reference to the Exhibit A or just the contract?
I would say if you have a question about anything that's just been talked about, I would raise that question now.
Okay.
Exhibit A is the Shrewsbury.
Yeah, Exhibit A is part of the
And
contract.
they are talking about C specifically.
Yes.
Yes, this would be the time.
Yeah, and I can bring that up. I know I've heard that the concerns over the overflow pond on the long causeway there, and that was that's not necessarily in concrete of what's going to happen. As we're looking at sedimentation zones, there's not a whole lot of areas that we have to put large amounts of sediments. We're surrounded by hills. Our disposal sites aren't going to fulfill the need once we get into hydraulic dredging. So one of the areas that we looked at was the overflow pond, which could potentially be turned into a wetland area where we could do, as we're affecting the wetlands, we will have to mitigate. So there's mitigation potential there. There's water quality issues with the blue-green algae. So if that's actually turned into a wetland, that fights a double-edged sword. We're enhancing water quality, we're mitigating other impacts. So it's just one of the areas, but that's not actually set in stone. That's just kind of one of the ideas as we're looking along. So part of this is going to be coming up with 3 initial concepts, which we will select one of those concepts that we want to explore into further detail. So we're not going to fill it in. You're not going to wake up and there's going to be a bird sanctuary prairie there. If we are going to use that for anything, it's going to be a wetland, water-based ecosystem to increase the plants. And that's all going to kind of get teased out as we go along with developing the project.
My concern is that the condition of.
Could I ask you to stand? So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Rebecca Ball, and I live at 6521 Snug Harbor, so it's on the overflow lake up in the woods with Abramite. But my concern right now is that the algae is already affecting the wildlife that was there, and some still is, and the strategic plan with the Exhibit A is long-term away, and I think it's very important to have action on the algae right now. I am concerned about, I know you talked about vegetation, and I hear swamp, and then I think mosquitoes and bugs, and then I think, but I've lost the lake I swim in, I've lost the blue heron that isn't visiting there anymore, I've lost the sight of the eagles coming down and eating out of the lake, and I've also lost fishing in the lake. And I don't want that to happen. It will also devalue my home. So I think it's imperative that we really address the issue now. And take care of the algae.
We do have, I guess along those lines, we actually do have a student with IU right now, SPIA, that's working on a hazardous algal bloom action plan. Les has been talking to that, and I've been in contact with him too. So we are working on that. Aside from dredging or alum treatments, which is essentially dumping alum chemical to strip out the entire water column, there's not a whole lot of options for what's right there. And even with an alum treatment, that'll generally last maybe a year or two, just because there's no mixing of the water there and no water movement. I mean, we really need to, ideally, I've been in contact with the city a lot, and I fought tooth and nail when they redid that culvert, because it used to be lower, so it actually allowed the water. And I really think once that culvert moved up and completely stopped the interaction is when we started having the problem, because after late July now, you really can't use it because it's all that.
I was in contact with Monroe County today, and he said that there was never a culvert there. And I know that's not true for a fact.
Yeah, when I talked with them, I told them it was previously lower and it was there to allow mixing, and they go, "Oh, we didn't think about that."
Exactly.
Yes, and now they're saying there never was one there, and I think that needs to be pursued. I really think that they're responsible for the condition of the lake. I'd also like to pursue the possibility of, I really wonder of having a water fountain that's solar powered, so it's not going to cost for continual operation of it, if it's solar powered, and and if it's good enough, it should be able to circulate the water.
Yeah. And that's definitely an option to look into. One thing I'd like to say is wetland does not necessarily mean mosquitoes and bugs. Stagnant water with algae building on it means mosquitoes and bugs. When it's properly functioning, the water actually stays pretty clear. So it wouldn't promote the stagnation of the water. So I will say that, and we'll absolutely look into that, because it's becoming, the past 2 to 3 years, it's getting blatantly obvious that it is becoming a hazard.
Yep, totally red is pretty obvious.
Yes, yeah, that rust color, and I was really thrown off with that too, because you're blue-green algae, but it was Cylindrospermopsis, which is potentially toxin producing. Luckily, there was no toxins present the past 2 years, so that will need to be addressed, and I really think the best way to do that is through an eco approach, which should kind of coincide with both of these. But we do have currently a student at IU working on a hazardous algal plan, which will involve, will involve prevention of the blooms, but it's a perfect storm right there.
One of the things.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying there will be action this summer.
We are in the process of, they're creating a plan now. Yes, I'm not gonna say we're gonna have an aeration out there this summer, but we are investigating and they are coming up with a plan to deal with the hazardous algal blooms.
Okay, and then that'll be presented to the.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
When will they have that plan?
He actually graduates before the summer, so we're hoping towards the end of the spring semester. This is his senior project that he's working on, so we should have it here in a couple months towards the end of the semester. Now, it's not a paid-for plan. This is his student project, so we'll see what we get, but they have been working on it. We have been working with them too, what we're looking for. So.
Okay. Have
you been able to receive help from the Brown County Water and Soil Conservation, who also does stuff for Monroe County? Have they been consulted?
No, not regarding the blue-green algae. They have not.
Okay, I have a contact name that could be used to follow up on that.
All right.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Yep.
One of the things that I would encourage people to do is to come to the if you're available, please come to the strategic planning committee meetings. And the other thing I would just say generally, and I speak for the committee, but I guess I'm also going to try to speak for the board here. We're not going to make any decisions without understanding the impact of those decisions on the freeholders, because that's not what this project is about. It's about sustaining the lake for the benefit of everyone that lives on the lake. So, but that said, we likely are going to have to make some tough decisions as we go forward. So we want to do the best that we can do, and the only way we can accomplish that is if you stay involved and alert us to these kinds of concerns. So.
And I would highly encourage people to come to the board meetings. We had a presentation last month. We had a lot of people who may have to change forms for the strategic planning committee.
Well,
but just coming to the meetings has been on the agenda, and that's why we're kind of stepping out. We're starting with a 10% plan. We're going to work our way up. We're going to get it out in the public. This is going to be kind of, pull the rug, boop. There's a wetland, everything's kind of filled in. We want to work with the public, but really it's staggering. When I left in 2009, we have probably another 50 to 100 foot of land mass and forest on the east end. And past practices, and we really haven't been doing it. We have to nip it in the bud now and really create kind of our battle wall front where we're going to try to stop this at and localize the sedimentation area. Or else I'd give that East Bay, East of Reed Point, 10 years if we do nothing before it's
okay.
3 foot of water.
Do you need a
yeah.
Mike Gray wanted to speak.
What kind of attendance are you having at these strategic planning?
Well, we have a contingent of 2 or 3 people that show up very regularly, and then we have some people who come just once in a while.
It's kind of an inopportune time.
Well, and I was gonna say this a little bit later. This is the time that tends to work best for the volunteer members of this committee, and I can't say enough good things about the work that Frank and Malcolm and Adam, we pay Adam, but they've put a lot of extra effort into the Lake Health Task Group, and we would not be where we are at this moment if they hadn't. So it's 3:30 on Friday afternoons, and Adam's point about it is at the lake office, so you could end up in a standing room only situation if a whole bunch of people start coming. But that's what works for the majority of the committee.
If you lived on the lake, it would be pretty easy. But when
Yeah,
you
that's why we do Friday afternoons.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
During public comments, I want to speak, but just real quick on something Rebecca said that might be of interest. When they put the new culvert in, and it was obvious what was going to happen, I talked to the engineer that was in charge of that project. I'll just throw in a little humor here. I wished I'd been recording it. He went, I never thought about that. I mean, they just put it on top of the other one because it was the cheapest way to go. My question is, if it check into it. If the culvert was right, the little lake would probably fix itself in a period of time. We've got to convince them that they messed up.
And I've been trying to, I don't remember having that blue-green algae,
Never.
the level of
I've been here
harm
since
in
78.
July, as
Yeah,
long
you-
as I can remember. It's
Yeah.
a very
I've been here, yeah.
distinct correlation between when the pipe raise and the water.
I've been here
And
since
that's
78,
something
and
that
it
we
was
can
clearer than
definitely-
the other lake was.
Well, it's just the motion. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
so
nothing.
all we need to do is get it fixed. But I understand the state. But anyway, just wanted to, and I've got his name, the engineer that was in charge.
Okay.
I can email it to you.
That would be wonderful.
So you'll have the name of the person that can prove that, yes, we did put a culvert in because they said they did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments or questions from the board, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agreement with Shrewsbury.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
All right.
Thank you. The rest of the update is very brief. We are talking to some other institutions about bonding requirements and looking at what is the due diligence that we have to be prepared for in that process. On the charitable giving front, Ann Roboleski and Adam are going to be meeting with the head of the Monroe County Foundation to review and get her comments on a scope statement for our funds. And once we have a statement that we feel is the way what we want and what we need, we'll be bringing that to the board for approval as well. Kathy McClure, who happens to be Malcolm's wife, is also joining the committee as a permanent member, and she's going to be helping us with fundraising and communications efforts as we go along. So we're really happy to have her join us. Our next meeting will be Friday, March 9th at 3:30 at the office. And that's my report.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the 2018 dredging priorities. We had traditionally done this in March, but we have for the last 2 years, Mike?
This would be
gone
the
with
second year, I think, that
February.
we've done it in
This is the
February.
second one?
This would be
Just for a variety of reasons, but partly that Adam's working hard to get ready and so we can hit the ground running. So we don't want to delay any dredging because the board didn't get this decided. So Mike and Adam, I don't know which one of you wants to start, but take it away.
You mind starting?
Yeah, I can start. Last year we started at zone 137. We have the small barge. We rented out the case excavator last year. We purchased that. It's actually working a lot better than, well, not a lot better. It's working great. It's working very good. It's a good piece of equipment. It's getting into these zones awesome. It's more efficient than even I thought it was going to be figuring out the cost. We did a lot of last year getting into the Chitwood channels was going around the tip of Little Africa. We did have to move about 2,000 yards. It's kind of a stilling basin where the creek comes in and meets that slow water that just circulates there. But now that we are around that, which was a big portion of time when we were into the channels, I would recommend, the manager's recommendation would be to stick with 137 and try to knock out zone 137 this year. Last year, we did have Icebox Cove as a second priority. I would recommend that if we can get out of 137. It's very likely that the budget and year will be spent trying to finish those channels, but while we have the equipment and while we have the momentum, I would like to go back and keep working. We have the disposal sites completely prepped. We are ready to go. I'm hoping to have water or boats on the water beginning to mid-March and digging in March. We've never actually done LLC digging until May after everything else. So manager's recommendation would be to stick in zone 137 and if we make it out of there with time and funding left, Icebox Cove, which would be zone 206. And I'd also like, I'm not sure why we got into the habit of doing private work in advance of our LCD digging, But the biggest headache for me is when we do private work and then we run out of water or run out of time, and then I'm getting questioned why we have LSD funds that weren't on the ground. So I would like to recommend that we start with LSD work and we do not move into private work until we are finished. We have 600 hours budgeted for LSD work, which is just under 4 months. I think it's 3 months and 3 weeks. So even with some bad weather days, I'm predicting that we can be out of funds, not necessarily done with the area, but we can be out of funds by sometime in August. And a lot of the private work is on the west end of the lake, where if we are a foot, 2 foot down, we can continue doing private work into the fall, and still bringing some revenue in, knock out some of that. So that is the manager's recommendation for the 2018 priorities.
Thank you, Adam. As the chair of the dredging study group, Adam and I have discussed this. I've also had emails and conversations with members just about everywhere on the lake. None of the members of the DSG, but everywhere on the lake about private dredging as well. Splitting up weeks in the months to take care of the private dredging. But what happens is either the disposal site gets filled up, or we have mechanical breakdowns, or we have weather problems, etc. And we can't get through with what the LLCD has based on a priority. So the people in the Chitwood area have been more than patient. I approve the recommendation by the manager, and we are going to have a DSG meeting to talk about some of the things that I just discussed, the private dredging, etc. So I will get that. Do I have to get that to you within 10 days? Does that have to be published?
We really just have to publish it within 48 hours, but it's nice to get a little bit.
I'll give you. It'd
be nice to get
10
like a
days
week or so. Yeah.
10 days or 2 weeks. So we will have a March DSG meeting. Michael, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I will need your person's name and contact.
Perfect.
And does everyone know who their representative is in each of their, okay. He used to be a former board member. What, the architect?
What, Tim?
Tim, thank you.
Tim? Yeah, right.
So, that's my recommendation to the board.
Mike, how quickly do you think you all have that meeting? Because I want to make sure we get our appointment.
It'll be sometime in March. I was just looking at my calendar. It'll be probably the second or third week in March. Looking at possibly the 16th. I think you want to have it on a Friday, right? Oh, 16th, that's not the, so you're doing the 9th.
Yeah.
So I could do the 16th.
Sure.
Okay. So looking at March 16th, not in stone, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm looking.
And we have historically, we may have only done, while we generally do about 5 or 6 riprap jobs, we may have only done 5 private dredging jobs outside of when we're digging in an area. Generally what we'll do is, as we're digging in a zone, we'll offer private dredging to the people in that zone because we're already there and it's just a lot more efficient. What I would love to see in the future, since we are using both barges for the Chitwood area to make it more efficient, once we finish that area, there's no reason, pending funding, why we couldn't do private work and LSD work simultaneously, since we do have the 2 pieces of equipment, and we'll be exploring that too moving into the future.
And we'll have a private dredging list at that DSG meeting to also discuss the rotation, the priority, the people that put their name in first, et cetera, how we will attack that, okay? So Jeff Hartman is your contact in your district, so that's my recommendation to the board. I would pursue a motion so that he can get started on this as soon as his crews are available.
So what are, Adam, do you want to talk
The motion
about?
will be to start in zone 137. Which
That
are
wasn't my question.
Oh. I said what the motion was.
How soon do you think you're going to start?
I'm hoping to be digging mid-March. I expect to have the equipment ready to go mid-March, early to mid-March. I'm hoping to be on the water.
So that would be
active.
significantly earlier than.
Yes, we've never dug before May.
And Mary Jane, may I interject just one time? I did give Adam approval to rent a track truck because of the mud.
I want one.
Well,
It's the coolest thing I ever saw.
He called me and I gave him approval of $2,400 or something like that.
Yeah, we
plus
generally
a
spend
delivery
about
fee.
a month
And,
that.
right, so
Notching out the
that was
week.
a no-brainer. I do want the board to know that we did spend the money to get a track truck in there. I'm sorry to interject.
No, that's all right. Okay. That's it. You answered it.
Are there, before we move along, make a motion, any other board questions on this at all? I promised y'all, anybody out in our public have any comments, questions? John?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
We put in that silt trap right there at the Possum Trot Bridge, and it's working awesome. However, it does have a great big mound where the silt is now. What is the actual plan? What do we do with that big mound of silt that's sitting there right now?
It's got a big shovel.
It is working.
Well, we can't build weirs and impact the natural flow of water, but Mother Nature can build weirs and impact the natural flow of water. So ideally, we would leave that mound forming to create a natural sediment area and then maintain right after that.
Is it diverting? Is it diverting, or is it just building a mound?
It's pretty much building a mound. I mean, it's a big area right there. And we actually need to get that back in. The ice started to rip it, so we had to take it out. But it is creating, it's stopping it, really slows it down. It's a fine mesh. So it's stopping right there, and then the sediment's landing out and kind of building a natural weiring system on the upstream side of it.
Was the other curtain used at the Watson Lane?
Yeah, it's in Watson Lane, yep.
All right.
I've heard that's totally, we took it off, so it's not up now. We've got to get back out there and put it back across.
The Possum Trot one, yes,
Correct.
the Watson Lane
Yeah.
one's still in there.
I had
yeah.
a complaint about that, so did we answer your question?
Got
Got it, okay. Yes, sir. Oh, hi.
Just a suggestion that someone take a look at that East Bay on dredging. I understand Chitwood is a priority, no question about that. But there are parts of the lane getting in and out in that East Bay now, particularly by where the island is there, that probably aren't 4 or 5 feet wide. And there are going to be folks with pontoon boats and others trying to get back in there. They're going to have issues. And then as you exit Eidolon, Point Eidolon, out past your place, there are several times this summer that we hit bottom out there trying to get out onto the lake. So there's some issues over there.
Is it primarily on the tip of the point right there where it's getting very shallow?
Yeah, there was some discussion last year about pulling some steel pilings that are
So right in that zone right there.
Pilings out that way a little bit, yeah. And back in the bay where the island is, you can't see the island today, it's underwater.
All right.
That area is very, very narrow.
I don't know.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Are we ready to make a motion?
If there's no more questions,
All right. I'd seek a motion then
Adam's proposal.
on Adam's proposal, acceptance of manager's recommendation on the dredging priorities for this year.
So moved.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the manager's report. Adam?
All right, the annual report. It was actually a really good year last year. Our revenue's down a little bit because of the lake drawdown for the trestle. Other than that, we did great, and we'll get into that. So it's kind of the manager's report is really just kind of an overarching summary of the year before. I'm essentially just going to paraphrase. This is all in the report online. And so first we'll do board of directors. 2 positions were filled in 2017. Les Wasinski ran unopposed for sub-area 5, and Laura Shell ran unopposed in sub-area 4. Thank you guys. For personnel, our staff included Alex Snooks, Andrew, who's been filling in as board recorder as well, and Matt Hopkins is the gatehouse attendant. We did have James Van Tassel as operations supervisor in the beginning of the year. We did go through a lot of operators last year. Levi had a baby in the end of June, and so we had to bring on a second crew. So as far as the operators, we had Levi Worthman, Edwin Bell, and James Walker. And for pushwheel drivers, Isaac Walls, James Schreiner, and Clinton Allender. Clinton actually is coming back with us this year full-time in that position, and he is great. He's an equipment operator. So if Levi can't be there, ask the farm, Clinton can fill in, we can bring in the pushwheel guys. I think we're set up with a really solid crew. Morale's really high, and we're kicking butt and hitting the ground running this year. So that's the gatehouse operations. The boating season, which is actually the docket and when we start charging, began on March 20th last year, and we took the dock out on November 12th. Boat permits and launch fees for the 2017 totaled $123,793. It was a $11,000 reduction in revenue, and a lot of that, I believe, is the drawdown, and not necessarily the drawdown itself, the fear of the drawdown. From the springtime on, I received calls, and a lot of non-resident boaters were weary to buy annual passes. And even after the lake was back up, I was still fielding calls saying, when are we draining the lake? I even heard we're going to keep it down for multiple years for a lot of them. So I think that really just kind of spooked a lot of people off from buying a pass. Aquatic plant management, Nate really touched on that earlier. Essentially, we treated, the first treatment was in May, we treated 70 acres of milfoil. In June, we treated another 9 acres of milfoil, 5 acres of lotus and spatter dock. And then in July and August, we treated 16 acres of lotus, primarily on the east end. There are some areas I don't touch anymore that we used to spray down. There's a little cove by the Boys and Girls Club, some other little nooks and crannies where there's no docking. I refuse to spray that stuff. It's great for the fishing, it's great for the environment. So if it's not causing anybody harm, I think we leave it there. The Shovel Creek trestle repairs was a major to-do. We did draw down the lake 2 feet. That was initiated on September 5th. The work actually started on September 20th, and they were completed by October the 4th, at which time the sluice gate was closed, and we let it fill back up for the winter. Wildlife control, which is primarily nuisance Canada goose. On the islands there, we did treat 17 nests last year. Average nest is about 15 to 20 eggs. So we did treat 17, and that's kind of right in line what we do. And I think it's my dog's favorite job is keeping me free of geese when we treat out there. So
When do you
we'll
do
keep them
that?
employed. We generally do that as soon as it starts to warm up, so usually early March.
Okay.
Water testing, IU, SPIA, Melissa Clark, they still have a contract for our water testing. I think they've been doing it since we've been mandated to do it. So they come out annually, they do the full parameter testing around the lake. It includes nutrients, algae, dissolved oxygen, fecal coliform, different bacterias. We generally get those results in April or May, and Melissa will actually come out once the report's done and present that to the public, as we have done in the past. And they have the contract again for this year, so they should be starting to treat soon. We did actually add some places for this year coming up, looking at some of the inflows and outflows of the lake to try to kind of track down some of the E. coli problems to see if it's coming off from farm lanes or different areas. So hopefully we can get some more usable information from the additional testing sites that we are doing. At Riddle Point Park Beach, since we are a public swimming area, we do have to test for fecal coliform. We test that weekly from the week before the beach opens up until the beach closes. Those actually go down to the Monroe-Dillman treatment plant on South 37. And none of the test results were over the state thresholds. We do see a spike generally when it rains, the ground's getting washed out, but you don't actually go over the threshold unless you have multiple testing periods in a row. Once you get up to about a week of over, then you kind of hit a ding. We've never had that happen. We've seen spikes and they're back down. The beach is very clean. A lot of that has to do with we turn over our entire volume of water about 5 times per year. So we do have a lot of water coming through. Riddle Point Park was opened on Friday, May 26th, which is Memorial Day weekend. We always open on the Friday, and closed on September 4th, Labor Day weekend, that Monday afterwards. Vehicle passes were $60 and park admissions was $7. It's the second year of 7, and I think people were starting to realize it was $7, and we couldn't use the excuse anymore that we didn't know, so that was good. Total park admissions were 44,900, so right about 45,000. This is an increase of $5,000 from the year prior, and actually every year for the past 3 years we have been increasing in users, which is great for revenue, and also a good reason to put some money into infrastructure in the park, which we are looking at. Riddle Point Park Shelter was rented 16 times throughout the year. Historically, we only had less than 10. We did put some signage up out there just to try to let the people know. So the rentals have been increasing on that, which is nice. We brought in $2,000 in shelter rental fees. IU Rowing hosted 3 events last year, which brought in a little over $2,400. This year's down. They're only hosting as a tournament the Dale England Cup this year, and then 1 scrimmage. So they're not going to be doing 3 full broadcasted tournaments. And also they are moving the lane, which we've talked about before. Some of you on South Shore may have seen them out there last Friday doing some surveying. So the new rowing course is going to kind of start at the end of the Long Causeway and end at their facility right there. Let's see
So
where I'm
that'll
at.
ultimately impact our revenue from the park, because it won't be as much of a need for them to go in.
It will impact our revenue a little bit. Historically, they would rent out the parks. They'd rent the shelter. They would do a special events fee. Overall, it'll probably come down. We'll probably lose a little over $1,000. It's not a huge amount. It is an amount, and that was kind of one of the reasons I was hesitant. But ultimately, if they think the course will be better there, and we won't hit it with the barge every time we come home, so that's a good thing too.
Perhaps they'd like to make a charitable contribution. to-
Yeah, I think so. It's not a bad thing.
Offset the loss of revenue.
We did host the Independence Day fireworks at Roto Point Park on July 2nd this year for a cost of $6,500, which we budget every year. Keith Heedy and Bill Hawkins did that. I've got some great reviews on the fireworks this past year. They did have one incident where all the finale didn't go off at once, so it lasted about 20 minutes of finale. So we'll see what happens this year. I'm going to propose that we work with them again. They're really great to work with. They're local. We got a lot more bang for our buck, literally, for what we were paying for. They actually kind of did it as a charity, and the entire amount went to Shells instead of everything else. So we'll be working with them to get the dates for the upcoming fireworks. It's in the middle of the week, so we'll tease that out as we move forward. But total donations, we were $6,100, so we came in just shy, about $400 shy of our total output. So that was nice. That's right in line with what we get generally for donations. Shoreline project permits, we approved 5 permits in 2017. And those almost exclusively dealt with shoreline erosion control, with riprapping jobs and seawall restorations. Since 1996, we've approved 374 shoreline permits. So it's good to see the residents getting active and keeping their shorelines. I've really gotten against seawalls. I won't even allow them anymore on city property. I would highly encourage other people looking at seawalls to just not even look at it. There's such better options with the riprap vegetation, the glacial stone, actually provide habitat. They eat the energy from waves. They don't increase wave action. And you don't have to go in every 10 years because they get undercut. So I just highly like to encourage the use of riprap and stone for that. The Lake Enhancement Project, notably this past year we did add on the KCX80 to our fleet of equipment. It's been a very, very nice tractor, works really well with the equipment, and it's actually been coming in handy. I've used it for a couple projects in the park this winter too. So it's not just getting used on the barge, we're using it on the land as well in the off season. So it's very nice to see that getting dual usage. We did stop early with the drawdown. We had to quit digging on August 31st was our last day. So we got 5,800 cubic yards out, which was a little bit low, but there was having to stop really didn't help us. Of that 5,800 yards, 400 cubic yards came from the west side of Point Eidolon, kind of right in the area where the sediment trap is before the bridge. 2,000 cubic yards was in zone 304, which is the tip of Little Africa. And then 3,400 cubic yards came out of zone 137, and we were able to dig into Chitwood, head west for a little bit, and then we're almost done with the Walker Lane, probably 100 foot left in that channel. So I'm really confident we'll be able to make a very large dent in that this year. Before I go into the attachments, the last part, just the providers. Insurance is provided by First Insurance Group, accounting services, Watkins Accounting, legal service, Carmen Parker, and our financial institutions, People's State Bank. I do have attachments here for the cost breakdown of the barge operation, and I've actually broke it down a little bit different than we have in the years past. Historically, there was a lot of guesswork with fuel burnt per hours and different equipment. I really didn't think it made a whole lot of sense. I broke it out quite a bit more. So as far as I broke it down to the operating staff cost, the non-staff cost, and then the private work, which is actually how our billing items are. We have 3 categories: the LLCD, the private, and then other, which is kind of an all-inclusive. So LLCD dredging, total of 867 hours between the 2 staff members, 478 for the dredger. We do budget 600 hours total for the LLCD dredging. That was a total of $22,000 in staff costs. LLCD other, we did spend more, is $23,600. That consists of all non-dredging, all private work. So it's debris removal, disposal site prep, equipment, maintenance zones, Brittle Point Park. It's really just the catch-all for non-LLCD digging and non-private work. Total is $23,000, and then private work, our total was $3,000 just in staff costs. So total barge operations staff was $49,257. For our non-staff costs, was actually quite a bit more. This is broke down into regular gas, diesel, dredging supplies, maintenance, equipment rental, and disposal site prep. We did have a lot of disposal site prep that year after we did the west side of Eidolon. So that was a big charge of $11,000. And the equipment rental was a huge hit, $28,860. That was primarily the KCX80 that we were renting. However, they took off our rental fees from the total purchase amount. So while we did pay that in rental, they took that off of our purchase amount. And then we did add on the equipment. We bought the excavator for $87,800. I think it was originally quoted out at about $120, and then minus our cost. So total non-staff, excluding the actual purchase, was $66,000. Riprap summary, which is our private work we did no private dredging. It was all riprap work, which is in line with what we generally do. And it's kind of broken down by district. In District 1, we had 2 jobs for a total of 170 linear feet of riprap. District 2, 100 linear feet. District 4, 525 linear feet. District 5, 115 linear feet. And District 6, 250 linear feet. So total was 1,160 linear feet of riprap that ended up on the lake, which is great. Our labor, or the project cost that we billed out, was $17,900, but we actually made, and our stone cost was $14,000. With our staff labor and stone costs, we ended up making $333. We do kind of try to break even on that. We want to give people a good cost to get stone on, and it benefits us from getting the shoreline. So we did manage to pretty much come even on that. Really, that's the report. If there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
No,
Good?
nice job.
All right, very nice. All right, that brings us to the reason you all are here is the drawing for a free boat permit. Todd, did you get your ticket when you came in? Okay, I think it was blocked. Adam, you want to do the honors?
Oh, both my numbers on it, then I probably won't.
If you, all right, you guys have, if there's both on it, let me have half of it.
Yeah, you got to give us half of
We'll do
it.
that first.
Yeah, that won't do any good.
Well, you shouldn't have said anything, that would have increased chances.
Somebody has great odds.
Look, all the engineers screwed up.
They like the numbers so much, I just wanted to keep them all.
Thank you guys. You're good. I handed
I like
We're gonna blame that one on Andrew.
Be careful, Adam. Adam has recently found this box, but it's got a big hole in the bottom. So
Yeah,
be careful.
yeah, they're all.
Here we go.
So someone just came in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sir?
Is that legit?
Is it not legit?
No.
Okay.
It must be present to
Let me
you.
get it.
All right.
All right, so you're gonna do the honors and drawing out.
Birthday boy.
Hard to get. All right, the first one are numbers ending in 5656.
Yay, John. That's awesome. Go District 6.
And afterwards, I do have some vouchers, though, so meet with me and I'll give those to you. We'll take a second to. All right, second boat pass, 5658.
There you go.
All
Wow, Jay, you have it.
That was mine.
Congratulations.
Very nice.
That's awesome.
That's worth the trip.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
just before the meeting's over, give the
Okay.
house a shot, please.
All right. That brings us to public comment. Mike, did you say you wanted to?
Yes.
If you'd like to use the podium,
Yeah.
you're most
Oh,
welcome.
If I can hobble in my.
Oh.
Adam, do you want to move
You can
the?
throw that.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's decorative.
My name is Michael Grady, live in District 7. Mike, it's, we live, I call it the Little Lake. What is it called? The Overflow or whatever the name of it is.
Causeway Pond,
Yeah,
Overflow
Causeway
Pond.
Pond, you know, the Little Lake.
Any of them.
If you ever go down the causeway during the winter, during Christmas time, I'm going to the Angel. So if you've ever seen that or anything, so. You know, one time, I actually in our mailbox, some person, anonymous, just sent us a Christmas card to the Lakeland Angel.
That's
It was so
sweet.
cool.
Very
It really was. What I'm getting ready to talk about is maybe very redundant to the board, so I apologize if so. But being this board is totally different than the board I had, Pam and I were talking, some dealings with years ago. I wanted to make sure everybody knew, and you may already know, what all happened years ago. When the board first started talking about the sediment removal, our little lake there was number one on the list to start filling it in. And of course, that didn't go over real well. Barbara and I own all the parcels on that part of the lake except for the one that Rebecca and Brenda own. So we have a number of parcels there. Years ago, whenever it was, when I learned that the board was gonna start filling in that part of the lake, we got into a heated discussion, extremely heated discussion. And without going into all the detail, really what would happen if you ever do that, it will totally destroy our property value. And that's sort of been retirement money, so I can start building houses there someday to give the lake more money. But if you fill it in into what you call a wetland, I call a swamp, it will totally destroy, okay, all the years that we put into that property. At that point years ago, it got so heated, you know, I got an attorney and he was prepared to take the board, Lake Limits Conservancy, to court for as long as it took to keep them from doing that. The final conclusion with the board at that time was to take that off the dump site, off the list of possibly ever using that. I don't think that must have been ever put in public record because you guys are somewhat considering doing it again. So today I'm really just asking you, nothing's changed. If you decide to do it again, I'll get a lawyer again. But what I asked the board to do is to, once you come to that conclusion, I know it won't be tonight, but when you do, to put it in record so we don't ever have to have this discussion again years down the road. So that's basically all I want to mention, and to put a little humor, I always like to end stuff with a little bit of humor. I would go along with filling in that little lake, which would destroy all my property, if all the board members would put an equal amount of sediment in front of their property. If you think about it that way, you see where we're coming from. You're taking sediment off of somewhere in the lake and dumping it in my backyard. It just isn't gonna fly. So hopefully in the future, you'll take that into consideration and not even consider that part of the lake as a dump site. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Todd? You got a-
Chief Todd, congratulations.
Well,
Chief of Maintenance.
yeah. My name's Todd Fisher. Most of you know me. District 6, I believe. Just real quick, I want to say, as far as the dredging for this year, I agree 95% with what they recommended. I think it is a good plan to continue where you started. Don't do private dredging while you still have water and time and money to do the other. Once you run out of the money, go to the private dredging. I agree with that. Even though I've been on the private dredging for another guy back several, another manager ago, but several years. One thing I want to tell everybody here that's here, and then you as far as board members, take it back to your people. How many of you here live in Brown County? You now have a boat that will come out if you have a crash, a body's missing something. All you gotta do is dial 911. Jackson Township Fire Department will come out, because we have a boat now that will come out to that lake or any lake in Indiana. But a lot of you don't know that. That's why I'm here today.
A rescue boat?
It is a fire rescue boat. The plan is by the time summer gets here, it will be equipped to actually fight a fire from the lake, which would have been great a few years ago over in Shipwood area.
Sure. Chief, now, as a mutual aid agreement with Monroe County, those residents can also call 911.
And that was the agreement with, once the boat got donated to the station, that boat will go anywhere in Indiana. So if Monroe County needed it, all they've got to do is say, hey, call over and have Jackson bring the boat. That way the manager knows that, because I'm sure, a lot of people didn't know this. But that way, everybody on the lake is protected in case of a emergency. We don't want it.
Right.
We've had cars out there in the lake before. We don't want it. But now we've got a better opportunity to save somebody.
Is that kept on Helmsburg Road there?
That right now is kept on Helmsburg Road during the summer, because I donated it and I work for them. It will probably be at my home. That way it is a lot closer and accessible. And if we need it somewhere else in the county, we just come out to the house and get it. But to me, it makes a lot more sense to have it in our district. We've got this lake here. Let's have it here on the lake.
Is it going to be on land then?
It will be, most likely it will be on land in my cove, water permitted.
Is it a pump? Water out of the lake or something?
That is our plan. Our plan is to put a trash pump on it to where we can pump water directly out of the lake and shoot directly on the house from, or the woods,
Whatever.
field, yard, whatever, from the lake. A good example was the big fire over there on Shipwood area. I call it Shipwood. I'm not sure if it's actually Shipwood. but
It is called Chitwood area.
In
all
that
those
area.
lands.
If we would have had a boat then, it wouldn't have been as bad.
Right. And you can pull hand lines off of that pump.
Yes, you can pull hand lines off of it. Like I said, the way
Sitting
we're
in the
gonna
water,
design it,
pumping
is
off-
pump
off
it right
the
out of the lake, and have a,
That's really cool.
50-foot hose, and you can add to it to go 200 foot. Yes, sir.
How big of a boat is it?
Right now, the one that we've got is a 16-foot John boat. We had a 24-foot pontoon with a volunteer fire department. We didn't have the money to put into that to get it operational yet. But at this point, right now, we have a 16-foot John boat. We'll go out and it'll rescue somebody or recover somebody. Or it can get up into the smaller channels to where we can get up there to a dock or a house or even the woods to, help fight a fire. And basically, that's what I'm saying. It's a rescue boat for either or.
Now, doesn't Benton Township also have one? I've seen it.
I believe Benton does. I know, I'm thinking they call it Northern Monroe County now. I know they do, but I believe Benton does.
Yeah, right there on 45.
Yes.
So.
But that way, everybody here knows, and you can take it back to your people that knows, we've got one. We don't want to use it, but we'll be glad to use it.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Confirm a rumor, you lost a boat in a fire at Raymond and Sherman?
It was a buddy of mine's that I
Not
helped
your
out a
boat.
lot and used. It was not actually mine. no.
Okay.
But yes, he was on Lake Lemon.
Your buddy?
Had it at Monroe, Shell Marina. And yes, he lost his,
At the fire?
beautiful Crown Line boat.
Oh, my.
In the fire.
At the Raymond and Sherman fire.
Yeah. on
Thank
the,
you.
Just add water fire.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
There was some type of a spill in the East Bay, some type of fluid, hydraulic fluid or something. Was there ever any resolution to that?
No, there was not. We could not find a source. We had an item down there. It has been reported. So I did follow the reports, and we'll be getting a copy of the report. It said it was not enough over the threshold for them to pay any money to come down and do a cleanup of it.
Okay. It was pretty interesting. It was pretty good.
How much was it, Michael? I haven't been able to be there, as you probably noticed, but
Well, it went from all the way at the end of the East Bay, all the way around. Malcolm, I think you saw it at the end of his
Just a-
property. So
just a
it went
film.
all the way around.
Yeah.
And some days it was less, other days there was a lot more of it.
We definitely think it was diesel.
Diesel or
There were a few
hydraulic.
suspected
Yeah.
areas there. And we'll be getting reports on that. But
Okay, yeah, that's kind of bad. The other question I had, as you come across North Shore, there are a number of places where there are numerous junk cars and trucks, those type of things sitting. Those have to be a hazard. Eventually, they're gonna leak oil, fluids, whatever. The hoses won't last forever in those vehicles. They'll get into the ground and into the lake eventually. Just something that I'm not sure who we should be talking to about that. I know it's not solely the lake's responsibility, but somebody needs to be addressing that issue. There are a lot of vehicles.
Would that be Brown County, up on that hill?
on the hills,
but
yeah.
There's some
They've
there.
been
yeah.
there forever.
Talk about
Yeah.
right.
It's all private property, I think, so I don't know what the recourse would be, but I always wondered too. I don't know. We could look into
It's
it.
something that should be looked at.
Environmental,
Help me
it's gotta be
about
some
it.
sort of
No.
environmental issue because you can't have stuff leaking.
No, it shouldn't.
No.
Shouldn't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
We're assuming it's leaking.
Are you guys, everybody spoken that would like to speak? All right, well.
I just have one
Oh.
follow-up, from the water ski folks last time.
Oh, okay.
Do we need to get back with them? Do we need to have a motion to approve that?
We were going to have insurance and legal look at
yeah,
that.
we're working with the attorney to get
Okay.
Before we make a-
contract signed up. So that'll be coming to the board probably sometime.
Hopefully by the next meeting. They did send a very lovely thank you. I don't know, did you get that, or was it just the two of us maybe that got a very nice, thanks for letting us come and speak, and they went on a little bit longer than I thought, but I thought they had done their homework and really were very impressive.
I just want to make sure we were close.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, believe me, they will not let us forget.
Yeah.
They are a persistent bunch, and it's great. Okay, on to board election results. There actually was no election to the two areas where we are needing a new person or an old person would be sub areas 2, Sue's district. Sue is going to retire, and Debbie Ladyman ran uncontested in that district, and she's here tonight, and we'll get to you in just one second. And fool that I am, I also ran uncontested in District 6, so, but I'm delighted to serve again. Before we do the oath of office, I don't want you all to think that I'm getting in the habit of giving gifts when people go off the board, but I really would be remiss if I didn't speak to Sue a little bit, and we will recognize you formally, as is our tradition in the summer. And I hope you'll come back to a meeting once in a while. I'm guessing we won't see as much of you, but I just wanted to say that Sue's been around through some tough times, and the three things I want to mention are she volunteered to be vice chair 4 or 5 years ago when there was a brand new chair, and that was me. And I don't think she knew what she was getting into, but I was appreciative of her willingness to serve, and we talked a lot, you listened a lot. Sue's one that I think she just did a great job at listening to others' opinions, but then finding her own facts. And we went to various meetings around the lake. We tried to go to Chitwood one day, and there was a flood, and we couldn't go the east way, so we went the other way. But
You're lucky I'm here tonight.
I know, we nearly died, but no, Sue does a great job of listening to someone's opinion, and that's what makes a great board. You listen to other people, and then you go and find out your own info and make your own opinion, and she did a great job with that, and she always shoots straight. the other thing about Sue is she always could make me laugh. I could walk into a summer meeting, jumpy nerves, you know, ready for anything, and Sue could make some off-color comment or a noise or sing a song and make me laugh. And I appreciated that because it was very helpful. So thank you. And you've had a lot of neat events in your life, a 40th wedding anniversary and your husband's retirement, and now you retire. So I hope that you will use this.
Yeah, but I'm not getting a pension.
You will use this
Thank
and celebrate
you.
together.
Thank you.
Thank you from a grateful board.
Liquor's always welcome.
So Mary Jane, I've asked her to administer the oath of office that we have. It's kind of a cool thing. Debbie, if you would come up, we're going to do this together. And
Do you have the blood sample kit?
I guess we can stand and be formal.
Yeah.
We're good.
Do you have to hold your hand up or anything? I've never done this before.
I've never known a board that's done this, but.
Okay, so.
It's in the rules.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I shall, to the best of my ability,
That I shall, to the best of my ability,
strive to accomplish the purposes
strive
try
to
to accomplish the purposes
for which the district is established,
for which the district is established,
and to properly operate and maintain its works of improvement.
and to
and to
properly
operate and maintain its works of improvement.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yay, I can leave.
Okay.
Not yet. Meeting's not over.
We're almost there. Our next meeting, I want to make a note of this, is Thursday, March 29th at 6, right here. That is a week later than it would normally be because Adam had an ill conflict, if I'm remembering.
Yeah, we have our annual Indiana Lakes Management Conference at Pokagon that week.
Ooh, so Thursday, March 29th, right back here. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, seconded?
Second?
Then we will adjourn. We are going to stay and elect officers. You are welcome to stay. You do not have to.
You're done.
Thank you for coming. Happy New Year.
Because
He is like this.
The definition varies.
Is this going to be fast?
Yes.